gunner decorated for valor on the battlefield, a spy, the world's first black combat pilot, who also is probably the first man to take a kitchen monkey into combat as well. And just to be clear, this is not like the A-Team Avenger type group that I'm laying out before you know. This is all one guy. His name's Eugene Bullard. His friends called him Sparrow. Everybody else just called him Black Swallow. And for further clarification, Eugene is most well known for being the world's first black combat pilot, but honestly, while it is a great achievement, it's one of the shortest and least interesting parts of his life story, which we're going to get to right after word from our sponsor. And ask them to the right way. Unfortunately, each data broker has a different right way. And believe me, knows actually her job to begin. How long that would have taken me to do it if I decided to do it myself, but I'm 100% sure I was a child in the late 1800s, early 1900s in Georgia, aka the South. He experienced racism quite a bit at a very young age. His first exposure to this, if he remembers, was when he was about 5 or 6 years old. He noticed that all of the other white kids that were his friends started to treat him differently because their parents told them to. And to make everything 10 times worse, at the age of 5 or 6, not only does he have to come to grips with the fact that he's losing a bunch of his friends and that he's going to be treated differently in a negative way for the rest of his life for something that's totally outside of his control, but around this same point in time, his mother also passes away at the age of 37. And these two horrific circumstances kind of mingle together in his mind. So not only is it every time he experiences racism, he has to deal with just the racism itself, but he's also constantly reminded of the fact, oh, by the way, your mom died when you were a small child. And the way this manifests to Eugene is he basically just wants to run away. He wants to get away from racism because A, that would be awesome, and B, it's going to allow him to not have to constantly be reminded of the fact that his mother died. And where he wants to run away to is this place that his grandfather and his dad always told him where people weren't racist, a place across the ocean called France. Unfortunately, at this point in time, he's like 6 or 7 years old, and running away across the ocean is an impossible task for him, so he's just going to have to stay put and deal with it for now. And this all comes to a head about a year later when he's 8 years old. His dad gets into an altercation. Now, William Bullard, his dad, is a single father in the South with 7 children. He is working his ass off, doing absolutely everything he can to provide for them. And the best job he's able to get at the time is working as a longshoreman, unloading cargo ships all day long. Now, he was a big guy to begin with. He's 6'3", but after unloading cargo ships for years on end, he is like 250 pounds of pure muscle on top of it. Because of this, he gets the nickname Big Ox. Now, despite the fact that he's a physically intimidating person, he still gets fucked with a lot of work, quite honestly, because they know that they can get away with it. He's a black guy, this is the South, he's not going to do shit because he's got 7 kids at home that are going to starve to death if he's not able to take care of them. So they just talk shit in his face and they treat him horribly. And Big Ox just puts up with it because it's literally all he can do if he wants to take care of his family. This goes on for months and months, and there's this one dude at work in particular that's always fucking with him. His name's Billy Stevens. And Big Ox just ignores it. Billy Stevens talks shit, Big Ox just turns his back and walks away. One day, Big Ox does just that. He turns his back and goes to walk away, and Billy Stevens grabs a hate bailing hook and smacks him in the side of the head with it, splitting open all the skin on his skull, and Big Ox is now bleeding everywhere. He turns around, grabs him by the neck and the groin, lifts him over his head, and throws this man off a dock into a cargo ship with a massive thud at the bottom, presumably killing him. Big Ox immediately runs to the office of his boss, Mr. Bradley, who actually likes Big Ox and treats him with dignity and respect, explains what happened. Mr. Bradley tells him, go home, lay low, I'm going to take care of it. Now, Stevens didn't die. Bradley runs to his office and says, hey, you're not going to tell anybody about this, or you're never going to work in this town again. You deserve that. Shut the fuck up. But unfortunately, a bunch of other racist white guys that were working with the dock saw a black man attack a white man, and that night they go out to the bar, they start drinking, and they come to the conclusion that they should go do something about it. So that night, while Big Ox is at home with his 7 kids, 2 cars pull up into the driveway, at which point Big Ox tells the 7 kids to go hide under the bed in the closet. He grabs a double-barreled shotgun, turns off all the lights, and points it at the door as a bunch of men are banging and screaming for more. He's just sitting there waiting in case they break that door down. He's going to have to fight whoever comes through to save his kids. Literally one of the scariest situations we have. While that's going on, 8-year-old Eugene Bullard is hiding underneath the bed, horrified because now he's already lost his mom and he thinks he's going to lose his dad and he doesn't know what's going to happen to him when that happens. Luckily, all of the men bang on the door, come to the conclusion that nobody's home, and they end up leaving. However, this is the breaking point for Eugene. At this point, at 8 years old, he decides, I'm running away from home. So that's what he does, he runs away. But Big Ox tracks him down and drags him back down. So he runs away again. Big Ox tracks him down again and brings him back. This 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old. He's constantly running away from home, and Big Ox is constantly tracking him down and dragging him back. But then, as a 12-year-old, he saves up his money, gets $1.50 to buy a train ticket, runs away from home, hops on a train to Atlanta, and once he hits a big city, Big Ox isn't able to track him down. Not really having a plan on what he'd do if he ever made it this far, he doesn't know what to do next, so he's just looking for food and shelter and anybody that can point him in the general direction of the ocean and how to get on a boat to cross it. And what happens is he runs into a group of gypsies known as the Stanley tribe from Britain. And they end up telling him, hey, we're not from France, we're from Britain. But Britain's a lot like France. There's not as much racism as there is here in South America. You can hang out with us. We're going to be going back to Great Britain at some point, and we'll take you with us if you want to stay and hang out. So that's what he does. He lives with them for 6 months to a year, and what they were doing in America was they were taking care of horses and doing horse racing. So he learned everything about horses and ends up becoming a professional horse jockey himself. As a imagine being a black jockey in the South, racism absolutely comes up and is definitely an issue for young Eugene Bullard, at which point he finally, looks at the Stanley tribe and is like, hey, are we going back to Great Britain or not? I'm sick of all the racism. And they're like, no, we're not going back for a while. So he's like, cool, I'm going to part ways. I'm going to figure out a way across that ocean right now. So he separates from the Stanley tribe, ends up working his way up the coast. He heads towards Virginia. So he's like 14 years old, ends up making it to this port in Virginia, and then he's just like kind of wandering around like, what the fuck do I do now? Do I go up and just ask somebody if I can hitch a ride across the ocean? Like, what's my plan here? And then somebody just starts yelling at him like, hey, what are you doing? Pick up those boxes. Help me load this ship. Come over here. And then he's like, cool. So he does it, and he just starts working. That's the story of how he got a job as a longshoreman, and he does that for months. Then eventually he's like, you know what? I'm just going to stow away on the ship. So he goes, hops on a cargo ship, no idea where that ship is going, and the ship leaves port, and then like a day and a half later, it pulls into another port. And he's like, I don't think the ocean's that small. So they port again, and he asks somebody on the dock, like, hey, where are we? He's like, you're in Virginia. Shit. So he gets off the ship, goes around the port, finds the biggest ship in the port, thinking like, oh, if it's a big ship, it's probably going all the way across the ocean, right? So he stows away on that ship. Like a day into this trip, he gets caught in the stowaway, at which point all these German sailors, some of them speak English, some of them don't. The ones that are speaking English are like, hey, we recognize you from the dock, you were the kid that's loading all the ships. I mean, we can throw you on the brig, we can keep you as a prisoner and drop you off at the first port we hit. We have to drop you off at the first port regardless because you're a stowaway. But if you'd rather, you can just like work for us and we'll pay you, and then we'll drop you off when we get there. And he's like, cool, sounds great, works his ass off, everybody on the crew ends up loving him, and because they're all German, Eugene actually ends up learning how to speak German. So it works for the entire voyage. They end up in Scotland, they end up paying him $25 in earned wages, they give him clothes, a bunch of supplies, everything they can, because they do like it. And he ends up just walking off the dock into Scotland with basically nothing to make a new life for himself.
Building your online business? Go to Wix.com and set up your store on a single integrated platform. Add products, showcase them dynamically, and seamlessly track your inventory. Accept multiple secure payments, and design your storefront down to the very last detail.
Now, Scotland at this time definitely different from the South America. Most of the people there, not really racist at all. However, they'd also never really seen a black person. So everybody just calls him Jack Johnson, who was the world heavyweight champion at the time. That was a black man, probably the most famous black man in the world at this point, and everybody just associates him with Jack Johnson.
It's not because he's black, though, right? Okay.
No, I just don't think so.
Not really knowing what to do, he ends up being a street performer for a little while, and then he goes back to being a longshoreman full-time, earning a decent wage, and you gotta remember, he's like 15, 16 at this point, he's finally going through puberty, and he's being a longshoreman unloading cargo ships all day long, so he just gets absolutely jacked, just like his dad. So he's working Monday through Friday on the docks, and then on the weekends, he's being a street performer, and then one day he sees this one performance where there's like, the big bucket of water, and you're sitting on the thing, and somebody throws a ball, hits a target, and then dunks the person in the water, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna try that as like the only black guy these people have ever seen. I bet I'll make a ton of money. So he gets a dunk tank set up, calls the thing Dump the Darky, and the entire time he's sitting on like, the plank or whatever it is that he's sitting on that's gonna drop out when the target gets hit, he's just talking shit to everybody walking by. So he starts making a ton of money. I mean, all the street performances that he did well because he was the only black guy around, and that was a spectacle in that of itself. But now that he's sitting there talking shit to people, the first time these people have ever seen a black man, he's talking smack to their face, and they get to pay $1 and then dunk him in the water, like, he makes a ton of money. And then he ends up turning it into like this Tootsie Pop type situation, you know, like how many licks does it take? He's like, oh, I've been dunked 9 times tonight, you better try for the 10th, and maybe that'll be the one that's enough to wash the black off me, and then I'll look like the rest of you motherfuckers. This thing ends up making him so much money that just working Saturday night, he makes more money than his entire salary as a full-time longshoreman. So now, he's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do this Friday, Saturday night, I'll make more money, and then I have the entire week free to go do something else. So now that he's got all this free time on his hands, he's like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? And he just thinks to himself, like, oh, I mean, everybody already calls me Jack Johnson and assumes I'm a boxer. I bet I'd do pretty well as a boxer and make a ton of money doing that if I tried that as well. So he tracks down this boxing gym, goes inside. The boxing trainer has like 0 interest in training. But Eugene isn't going to take no for an answer. So, despite the fact that the boxing coach isn't going to train him, he's like, I'm just going to hang around the gym and I'm going to work here for free. And that's what he does. And he works there for free for months, just doing everything that needs to be done without being told so. And then eventually, the boxing coach is like, fuck, fine, okay, put some gloves on, come over here, and he starts training Eugene how to box. So that's what he does. He's training full-time to be a boxer Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends he's making all this money doing the dunk kick thing. And after about 6 months, he ends up taking his first pro fight at 16 years old. During that fight, he's so fast and borderline untouchable, he ends up earning his first nickname, Sparrow. He crushes it, does great. Now he's making money as a professional boxer. Early on in his career, one of the first cards that he ends up fighting on is being headlined by another black American boxer known as the Dixie Kid. His real name is Aaron Lister. He is a world welterweight champion, and at this point in time, he is currently living in France after leaving America for the exact same reason that Eugene Bullard did, to get away from racism and segregation. So Aaron Lister, presumably seeing a lot of himself inside the young Eugene, goes up to him after his fight and is like, hey, you should come back and go to Paris and train in my gym. To which Eugene is like, absolutely, Paris, France has been the goal my entire life since I was 8 years old. Let's go. And Eugene Bullard is now moving to France. So he gets to France, he learns French, and it's absolutely everything he ever wanted. He's a professional boxer, he's traveling all over Europe. He also picks up being a jazz musician and a street performer. He's living his dream. He's getting to travel around and do what he wanted, and people don't treat him different because he's black. He actually ends up training with a bunch of other famous black boxers that are living in France for the exact same reason, including Jack Johnson, the world heavyweight champion.
When I started drinking warm water for my prostate, my friends laughed at me. But when they saw how much I had improved, they started doing it themselves.
Unfortunately, like all dreams, you have to wake up eventually, and Eugene's wake-up call would come in August of 1914 when the Germans would invade France. At this point in time, Eugene is 18 years old, and he absolutely wants to go fight for his new adopted home. So he goes to the military recruiting office, shows up, and they're like, cool, where's your paperwork? He's like, I literally have nothing. I left home when I was 12 years old in Georgia with nothing but $1.50 in my pocket. I don't have anything. So they basically kick him out and tell him that he can't join. So he starts asking around how he's going to be able to join and help fight and defend France. And he ends up finding out about the French Foreign Legion. If you don't know the French Foreign Legion, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is foreigners fighting on behalf of France. Other people that do it have a different reason for doing it. Some of them believe in what France is fighting for and they want to join that fight. Some of them are idealists. Some of them are just looking to get a new start, and they go and they serve in the French Foreign Legion for a couple of years, become a French citizen, and adopt a new identity. So Eugene goes and he talks for the French Foreign Legion. Unfortunately, he's not going to be allowed to sign up for a couple more months until he turns 19 years old, which is exactly what he does on October 19th. He goes and on his 19th birthday signs up for the French Foreign Legion and goes straight into training. Now, the French Foreign Legion is pretty well known and very prestigious, and their training process and their qualification process is known to be extremely tough, and a lot of people don't make it through and become legionnaires. But at the end of the day, this is Eugene Bullard we're talking about, right? He was a professional horse jockey at the age of 12. He's been doing manual labor with grown men since he was 13. And he's been a pro boxer since he was 16 years old. There's nothing that this training is going to throw at him that he hasn't voluntarily done to himself already. So Bullard obviously absolutely crushes it, graduates top of his class, becomes a legionnaire. And because he did so well in training, he gets rewarded by getting to carry the machine gun into battle. Honestly, it's just nice to know that all the other militaries across the planet do the same exact shit. Like, oh wow, you did a great job, here's your reward, you get to carry the heavy gun. Also, as soon as we get into a firefight, everybody's going to shoot at you first. But Eugene doesn't care. He's ready to go off and fight for his new home in France. He is part of the 3rd Marching Corps of the French Legionnaires, and they receive orders to go to the western front near the Somme River in November of 1914. So they take off marching on foot, they reach the western front by early December, and according to legend, one of the first things that Eugene Bullard is told to do is to go and guard one of the flanks during a major German offensive where he needs to hold the line to keep all the other legionnaires from being overrun on the flank. Bullard aimed his machine gun, cutting down wave after wave of Germans, while the rest of the men of his team run back and forth, getting more and more ammo for Bullard to continue doing this. This went on for so long, and the gun got so hot that it actually boiled off all of the water in its water cooling system, and the gun overheated entirely and was no longer operable. Okay, that's not good. The Germans are still coming. There's no time to run off and get more water, and they can't hold this flank with just bolt-action rifles. They got to do something, and they need to do it fast. So Eugene, thinking quick, does the only thing that comes to mind. He climbs out of the trench, stands up in front of his machine gun, opens up the water coolant tank, and proceeds to piss into it in front of all of the Germans. And somehow, thankfully, he doesn't get hit. I don't know if that's divine intervention. I don't know if the Germans had also never seen a black guy, so they were just taken off guard by seeing this dude jump out of a trench and piss into a machine gun, you know, like what? Oh my god, the French have Jack Johnson on their side. But I mean, realistically, it's probably just plot armor because he's the main character. Regardless, he successfully defends his flank, fighting continues for about a week and a half, and then it's Christmas 1914, and Eugene Bullard is there and takes part in the famous Christmas truce of 1914, where soldiers from both sides leave their trenches, meet in no man's land, and celebrate Christmas together. After that, early 1915, Bullard and the Legionnaires continued to go on and fight in the Battle of Champagne, where Bullard was not defending flanks, he was storming enemy trenches. And as I'm sure you can imagine, this particular type of close-quarter combat really favored Bullard along his boxing experience. And one of the things that he said was that when he would swarm into a trench, these trenches were so full that it was hard to tell after he'd really killed a man, because there literally wasn't room for that guy to fall down dead. And Bullard is fighting in this type of environment for months and never once gets seriously injured until his unit is finally pulled out, not because the battle is over, but because his unit has experienced over a 50% casualty rate. Despite that, Bullard is still relatively young. So at this point, Bullard's unit is going to be disbanded, at which point all of the men that are still capable of fighting are going to be given a couple of options. You can A, just be done. You can get out of the war, you've done your part, thanks for your service, and fuck off. But you're not going to get your citizenship because you haven't served the full 3 to 5 years in the French Legion, if that's what you want. So option B is you can get sent over to North Africa where there's significantly less combat, or option C, you can get restationed with the 170th French Infantry and continue to fight in the trenches of Europe. Now, most of the men choose to be sent over to North Africa because trench warfare is absolutely terrifying. But Eugene Bullard isn't here because he wants to defend a bunch of French colonies in North Africa. No, he's here because he wants to defend his new home, Paris, France, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He's one of the few men that volunteers to join the 170th Infantry Regiment of the French Army. So he turns in his Legionnaire's uniform for a French infantry uniform and goes right back into combat. Now, the 170th Infantry Regiment is a famous unit in the French military, and their nickname is the Swallows of Death. And after hearing about Eugene Bullard's performance in the Legionnaires and then continuing to perform at that same level, if not higher, in the 170th Infantry Regiment, it doesn't take long before he is officially given the nickname the Black Swallow of Death. From here, Bullard fights in the Battle of Verdun, one of the deadliest battles of World War II, with over 8 million casualties, and unfortunately, Eugene Bullard is one of them. Shortly after Bullard and the men of the 170th took an enemy trench, the Germans were hit with artillery fire, and a piece of that shrapnel would end up hitting Eugene Bullard in the face, cutting open the side of his face and ripping out most of his teeth on the right side. Despite that, Bullard manages to keep himself in the fight. Now, at this point, most people, at a minimum, would lay low, but not Eugene Bullard. That night, the commander of the 170th needs a volunteer to run through half a mile of machine gun fire and artillery fire to receive important intel and orders from the chain of command and bring it back to him. And Bullard volunteers to lead the group to this. Bullard, despite his injuries, manages to get this done and is actually put up for the French Croix de Guerre because of it, which is the equivalent of a Bronze Star. The very next day, Bullard is hit with artillery and he had fractured the vertebrae in his back and blowing off a chunk of his thigh that required 90 stitches to shut. He's sent back to Paris where for the next 8 months he's going to have facial reconstruction surgery, he's going to have rehab, desperately try to regain his ability to walk. While undergoing treatment, he obviously meets a bunch of other soldiers that were also wounded, one of which was a commandant in the French Air Force, and he recommends to Bullard, you know, if you're not going to be able to go back and be a ground-pounding infantryman, maybe you can be a machine gunner in a plane. You don't need to walk and run around for that, and since your leg and walking is no longer a strong suit, you can still shoot machine guns. Why don't you go to aerial gunnery school? I can make it happen. I'm a commandant. So that's what Bullard does. He requests to go into aerial gunnery school, and he is granted that request, considering the fact that he already has a Croix de Guerre and a bunch of other French service medals, and he is going to be going to aerial gunnery school, but he's got a couple of weeks to leave where he can go out and hang out with his friends in Paris before he does that. And one of his friends was this guy by the name of Jeff Dixon. He was this rich dude that lived in Paris, and when they were out drinking one night, he ends up betting Bullard $2,000 that he can't become the world's first black combat pilot, and Bullard accepts the bet. Now, does Bullard have $2,000? No, but he is the main character, and he knows he's going to make it happen.
Make that. How about you bitch? You make that deal?
I'll make it.
Damn good deal.
Okay, name that acronym.
Let's see how many I can get right.
These have to do with the CIA?
OBE.
Isn't this when you're knighted?
I say the illness is OBE. Overtaken by events.
Critic?
It's something intelligence.
Critical intelligence, President.
Files corrupted. ComSec. Communications security. Boom.
So Bullard goes out to aerial gunnery school, and his luck would have it, on his very first day there, he runs into a pilot by the name of John Navarre, one of France's very first ace pilots ever, who's a huge boxing fan, and is actually a fan of Eugene Bullard. And he ends up helping Bullard get into the pilot program, getting him through the pilot program, taking him under his wing, and teaching him everything he knows. So Bullard goes, graduates pilot school, becomes the world's first black combat pilot. Just for the record, pilot school at this point in time is absolutely terrifying. You gotta realize, fighter planes are all single-seat aircrafts, okay? There's no, you get to go up in the air with a co-pilot who knows what they're doing, and they can talk you through it, and if something goes wrong, they can recover the controls from you. No, it's like, once you go up, it's all you, bro. That's it. Okay, most of us had to learn how to drive with a driver's ed teacher running the brakes and potentially the steering wheel, and that's just going forward, backward, left, and right. He's going forward, backward, left, right, up, down, and there's wind on what amounts to a fucking kite with an engine attached, okay? Absolutely terrifying, but he manages to do it. Now, what do you do when you're in the military and you graduate a tough course or do something impressive? That's right, you get some leave, you go out and you drink with your buddies, and that's exactly what Eugene Bullard does. He goes back into Paris and tracks down Jeff and is like, hey, I'm the world's first black combat pilot, where's my $2 grand? Jeff, man of his word, pays up. And this is my favorite part of the story because now, according to legend, they go out on the town, they get absolutely hammered, and at some point, Bullard ends up winning a capuchin monkey in a game of dice. So you wake up the next morning, you've got like $1,800 in cash left, you've got a capuchin monkey, what do? Obviously, you pay money to have a custom monkey-sized leather bomber jacket made, and a set of goggles, and a little headset, so that your monkey can go on all your missions with you. Oh, and then you got to name him, obviously, so we named the monkey Jimmy. And then, because flying around with a capuchin monkey wearing a bomber jacket and goggles isn't enough style points, we're also going to get a custom paint job on our plane of a heart with a dagger going through it that says, all blood runs red across the side. Now, Jimmy and Eugene were only actually on active flight duty for like 90 days, and during that time, he claimed to have shot down like 5+ planes, but the problem is, how you get a confirmed kill during World War I is actually really difficult. You essentially had to shoot down an enemy plane over your territory so that you could go and actually track down the wreckage. If you shot down the enemy plane and then you shot them down over enemy territory, or if you shot them down over your territory and they managed to lift their plane into enemy territory, they couldn't confirm that that plane was down, so it never actually counted. So while Eugene did shoot down somewhere between 5 and 7 enemy planes, none of them could officially be confirmed because the wreckage didn't make it onto friendly territory. However, 2 of them were probable, meaning that another friendly pilot witnessed him shoot down and heavily damage the enemy plane before it went into enemy territory. So after 3 months and 25 missions, Eugene goes out to the bar one night and he is wearing his appropriate uniform with all of his medals. And at this point, Eugene has done a lot for the French military and he's been appropriately awarded for it. He has the Croix de Guerre, he has the Wound Medal, their equivalent of the Purple Heart, and he has like, I believe, 13 other medals on his chest, more than most soldiers have. Because of that, a racist officer at the bar that night goes up to Eugene, accuses him of basically stolen valor, saying that he's wearing medals that he didn't actually earn, and the altercation escalates until Eugene Bullard ends up knocking him the fuck out. Now, despite the fact that that guy totally deserved it, he is a superior officer, and Bullard did in fact strike him, and he's sentenced for that is 5 years of hard labor. However, considering the circumstances and the fact that Bullard was so well decorated for battle, they decided that they were not going to sentence him to 5 years of hard labor. They were instead going to send him back to the 170th Infantry, where he would then basically be a glorified janitor for the rest of World War I. And to make things even worse, at some point during this period in time, Jimmy, his loyal Capuchin monkey, does end up dying from influenza, and the entire military base has a funeral for him. So yeah, Jimmy dies and Eugene ends up spending the rest of World War I scrubbing toilets. Definitely not the happy ending we were hoping for. Luckily, this is nowhere near the end of Eugene's story.
What's the difference between a service animal and an emotional support dog? Well, a service animal has to go through long and expensive training so it can work and carry out tasks for people with disabilities.
So World War I comes to an end, Eugene gets released from service, not really knowing what to do next. He just goes back to pro boxing, goes in there, has his first fight, his legs are still messed up, he can't move as quick or as fast as he used to. Despite that, he goes in there, knocks out his opponent, but he breaks his right hand in the process. And to make things worse, the promoter slips out the back door before he pays Bullard, so Bullard doesn't even get paid for this pro fight where he just broke his hand. So Bullard chases his promoter down the alley, chases him down, knocks him on the ground, roughs him up a little bit, takes his wad of cash out from his jacket, takes exactly the amount that Bullard was supposed to get paid, takes that for himself, and throws the rest of the money at the guy, and goes back home. So at this point, Bullard comes to grips with reality. He's not the young man he once was. He's got a messed up leg. He's got a messed up back from the war. On top of that, he just broke his hand. He's not going to be able to be a prize fighter for much longer, if at all. So he decides he's going to retire from pro boxing, and he decides his next thing is going to be teaching boxing. So he takes all of the money that he has saved up from the war, from that bet he won, from winning that prize fight, and he goes and he opens his own boxing gym. Right out of the gate, it's a huge success. He already knows all the pro boxers in town. He's known as a war hero. Like, of course you want to send your kid to go learn how to box from Eugene Bullard, the Black Swallow of Death. Like, it could not be successful in this. So, boxing gym is a huge success. He takes the money that he makes from that and reinvests it into a cafe. And that cafe turns into a bar/nightclub. Now, because all the world-class pro boxers in the area want to go and train at Bullard's gym, it only makes sense that they're also going to want to go drink and hang out at his bar at his nightclub. And you want to know who enjoys hanging out with all the world-class boxers? All the rich, famous, wealthy people in the area as well. So now, Bullard's nightclub/bar turns into this really high-end establishment. The problem is, bars at this point in time have to close early in Paris, but there's a loophole. A bar sells individual drinks, so what Bullard does is he changes it, and he no longer sells a pint of beer, a drink of whiskey. He only sells full bottles. He turns it into a bottle club, meaning that he doesn't have to shut down at all. So now, not only is he attracting super high-end clientele, they're also going to be spending a ton of money, and he doesn't have to shut down early like everybody else. So Bullard's Bottle Club ends up being the place to hang out and party in Paris if you're rich, powerful, and famous. All the high-ranking military officers are going there. Bullard's buddies with all of them. Okay, Louis Armstrong performs there, and he's personally friends with Eugene Bullard. You know, Louis Armstrong, the famous jazz musician that sings It's a Wonderful World. Josephine Baker performs at his club, who was like the it girl at this point in time. Okay, F. Scott Fitzgerald is his personal friend, the guy that wrote The Great Gatsby. Hemingway ends up hanging out there so much that he based a character off of Eugene Bullard. Okay, the fact that most people have no idea who Eugene Bullard is, despite the fact that he's like one of the biggest main characters of all time, is absolutely insane. Okay, not only are all the other main characters from all over the world flocking to his nightclub in Paris to hang out with him, but people that are seemingly nobodies, that are just adjacent to him, somehow, seemingly through divine intervention, go on to also become humongous main characters. Because you want to know who the dishwasher is at Eugene Bullard's Bottle Nightclub? It's fucking Langston Hughes. One of the most influential people of the 20th century is doing dishes in the back at Bullard's club. So Bullard is like the pinnacle of social society in Paris at this point in time. Like, everybody wants to hang out at his nightclub. He's a war hero. Everybody knows who he is. So during this time, he also ends up falling in love and marrying a woman by the name of Marcel. And Marcel is basically this heiress to this super rich French family. So they end up dating for a while. They end up getting married. Everything's going great. They decide they're going to start having kids. She ends up giving birth to Bullard's son, who unfortunately passes away at 6 months old from pneumonia. This scars Bullard for the rest of his life. Despite that, they do end up trying to have more kids, and in 1924, they're lucky enough to have a daughter, Jacqueline, and then again in 1927, they have another daughter, Lolita. And for the next couple of years after that, he's living the dream. He's getting everything that he hoped that he was fighting for. He's getting to have breakfast and lunch with his daughters every day before he goes off to work to run his nightclub. He has this, wife that they're fortunate enough that she gets to be a stay-at-home mom, and everything's going great. Unfortunately, when Marcel's parents pass away, they end up leaving her a fortune, at which point she gets a little bit tired of her husband who is working at this nightclub all the time. She's super rich, and she just expects him to sell the nightclub, live off their fortune, and they can go to the opera and just have fun for the rest of their life. But that's not who Eugene Bullard is. He wants to work for everything that he has. He wants to punch his own ticket. He wants to make his own way. He doesn't want to live off of another man's fortune, so he refuses to do it. This ends up causing a rift between Bullard and Marcel. Eventually, she would end up leaving Bullard and both their daughters. Bullard ends up telling his daughters that the mom actually passed away. I'm not sure why. I'm assuming it's because the mom wanted nothing to do with them, and he thought maybe it would be easier for the daughters to come to grips with the fact that their mom got sick and died, and not their mom just doesn't want them. Regardless, Bullard now finds himself in the very same situation that his father was in, a single dad looking out for his kids. And if that wasn't bad enough, as time goes on and we get further from World War I, closer to World War II, more and more travelers are coming into Paris. You have Americans that are coming back to the place that they had fought in World War I to visit, particularly a lot of white men from the South that think they can act exactly how they act in, I don't know, Mississippi or Georgia at the time, and they think that they're going to be able to come over to Paris and fuck with anybody that happens to be black, particularly Eugene Bullard. And to be completely honest, it pretty much never works out for them. They all get their ass whooped by Eugene Bullard, and then the cops show up, and they're like, oh, wow, now the black guy is going to get arrested because he had the audacity to hit a white man, and that is not the case, because the cops show up, and they're like, oh, what's up, Eugene Bullard, kingpin of Paris that everybody loves? Is this another racist asshole that tried to beat you up because you're black? Yeah, cool. We'll arrest his ass. And this happens like damn near hundreds of times. In addition to that, there's another demographic of racist people coming to town, the Nazi party, and he's not putting up with their bullshit either. Until he does.
My mantra is that every next level demands a different you, and Purdue Global is giving me an opportunity to prepare myself for that next level. This is my comeback. Start yours today at purdueglobal.edu.
Ninja Turtles in Hero Wars. The legendary RPG Hero Wars welcomes new heroes to the battlefield. Unleash.
And the reason he starts putting up with them is because he realizes he's the perfect spy and starts working with the French resistance. You see, his high-profile club attracts high-profile Nazi officers, and they view him as just some dumb black guy who definitely can't speak French and German and English, so they can just say whatever they want in front of him because he's not going to be able to understand what they're talking about. So he eavesdrops on high-profile Nazi officers all the time and reports it back to the French resistance. And he's so effective at it, they actually end up assigning him like a full-time French resistance spy. Her name is Cleopatra Carrier, or as everybody calls her, Kitty. In addition to working with Kitty, he also starts to get Josephine Baker, the famous woman I mentioned earlier, to start being a spy as well. Now the problem with that is him catering to Nazis kind of pisses everybody off, and he can't just go out and tell everybody like, hey, I'm actually being a spy to set them up. So he just kind of has to like let everybody think that he's being friendly with the Nazis when that's not his goal at all. So the general public's kind of pissed off at Eugene, and this all comes to a head when this drunk gangster comes staggering into his club at like 2 p.m. asking where Bullard is. So Eugene comes out from the back, and this gangster immediately shoots him in the stomach. Now Bullard, having just been shot, immediately collapses. No, I'm just kidding. The man has plot armor. He then proceeds to bum rush the guy, take the gun away from him, and then beat him unconscious and halfway to death with a bottle of booze before collapsing. So his partner Katie and his employees end up getting to the hospital, in which point the doctor examines him and basically says the bullet ricocheted around inside your intestines before exiting by your right hip. You're like 99% going to die and start getting your affairs in order. Sepsis is going to set in soon. Sorry. To which Bullard basically replied like, nah, I'm good, actually. I'm a very busy guy. I've got kids I got to take care of, employees, running a couple of businesses, being a spy. I'm too busy to die right now. Basically, just wills himself to live after the doctor told him he's going to die, makes a full recovery, he's perfectly fine.
Run your punk ass over there, talk shit. You be spitting out teeth, bitch.
Now, the gang that she was a member of was actually hardcore anti-Nazi, and they were working with a branch of the French resistance, but it was a different branch than what Bullard was working with. So they had basically put a hit out on Bullard to have him killed because they thought he was a hardcore Nazi sympathizer. Not realizing that they were on the same team the entire time, and the whole thing was just one big miscommunication. So the gang members apologize profusely, they pay him off and beg him not to press charges, they give him a bunch of money, to make up for all the money that he lost by not being able to operate his club the entire time, at which point Bullard is like, I mean, okay, I guess, and that's pretty much it. So Bullard goes right back to doing doing what he was doing. He's running his businesses, he's being a spy, everything's going fine. And then one day from the French resistance, he gets word that, hey, the Germans they're kind of on to you. They don't know exactly who you are, but they do know that one of our top spies is a black dude that either runs or works in this nightclub, and he's like one of our top guys, which kind of narrows it down to you. So just be aware of that. But it's not really an issue because the Germans haven't invaded France until they do. And as soon as that happens, now it's a humongous fucking issue. So after the Germans invade France, he basically has to board up all his businesses. It's impossible to run a business in France at this point in time. And at this point, he has two options. He either has to, A, cut and run, flee to a different country, or B, at the age of 44, he has to go get a gun and fight the Germans. And this is Eugene Bullard, so he tracks down the 170th Infantry Regiment, his old unit, and he's going to go fight with them. He takes a couple $100, gives the rest of his life savings to his partner Kitty, tells Kitty to watch after his girls until he comes back, and if he dies, get his girls somewhere safe. He loads up a 50-pound backpack with wine, cigarettes, and sardines, which is basically beef jerky, and heads off to the front line to link up with the 170th at the age of 44 years old. Okay, can we just take a minute to appreciate what a fucking gangster Eugene Bullard is? Like, the Germans attack, everybody else is fleeing the country, and his immediate knee-jerk reaction is like, I need a big backpack, I need cigarettes, booze, canned meat, and money for more cigarettes. I'll find a gun along the way. I'm gonna go fight these motherfuckers again, double or nothing, at the age of 44. So that's it. Bullard sets off. He's gonna go rejoin the 170th and fight the Nazis. He gets about halfway there, and then suddenly all the people are headed the other direction, including a bunch of wounded soldiers. The 170th has been completely wiped out. So Bullard's like, okay, cool, I'm going to turn around too. I'll head back to Paris and check on my kids. I'll find out where a different army unit is, and then I'll go join them. So he gets back to Paris. Germans already have control of it, and it is under complete lockdown. He can't even get in there to check on his kids. Now, there's still pockets of resistance, so he starts asking around, finds out that there's a big unit right outside of Lyon, so he heads that way, ends up linking up with some of the soldiers there, at which point he's like, okay, I'm just going to join you guys. They're like, you're kind of old. You need to go talk to the major in charge. So they send him that way. He goes to the major, walks in, sure enough, it's a guy that he fought with at Verdun. This major immediately recognizes Bullard as the complete badass he was from World War I. He immediately promotes him to sergeant and gives him control of a machine gun squad. He then sends them out to the smaller village outside of Lyon so that they can defend it. On their way there, they get ambushed by the Germans, and they get hit with German 88 artillery fire, and he ends up killing 11 men, wounding 16, including Bullard. One of the shells lands about 10 feet from him. It launched him 40 feet through the air and smacked him into the side of the building, shattering one of the vertebrae in his neck, breaking multiple ribs, messing up his entire side, and obviously giving him a humongous concussion. He gets drugged out by one of the medics. He comes to him in the hospital, at which point they're like, dude, we're going to get overrun by Nazis in any minute. You're a black American that's fought against in World War I and World War II. If they catch you, they're going to kill you on the spot. You need to get out. So he grabs his stuff and just starts limping his way to Biarritz, where the American embassy is, so he can get a passport, hopefully get sent over to America, where he's going to be safe. He walks all through the night, gets about halfway there, and then in the morning, there's this field, and out in this field, there's a soldier sitting up against a tree with a bicycle, so he walks out, it's a French soldier, so he's like, hey, can I have breakfast with you? Can I hang out for a minute? I'm going to sleep here for a bit. Can you look out for me? The soldier's like, yeah, sure. He's like, do you have any food or water or anything? I'm starving. I'll trade you my bike, whatever. So he ends up trading him a couple of cans of sardines for his bike, takes a nap, grabs his bike, rides it over to Biarritz, gets to the American embassy, okay. The embassy lets him cut to the front of the line because he's in a military uniform that's still all bloody and he's clearly wounded. He explains everything that's going on, and he's like, I don't have a passport though. I left when I was 12. I ran away. I slept myself on the ship in Scotland. I just made my way over to France. So the American embassy's like, shit, okay. And they drag him in the back, and they're getting all the information. Where were you born? What's your birth date? There was somebody there that was actually from Columbus, Georgia, and he's kind of quizzing him on the area, making sure that he's not lying. And he knows absolutely everything about Columbus, Georgia, passes the test, and they're like, okay, this guy's legit. So they fill out the paperwork for him to be able to get a passport. The problem is, you can't actually get the passport there. You can just get the paperwork okaying you to get the passport there. You have to go to another town 175 miles away to get your picture taken and have the right person sign off on your new passport.
I'm going to die.
Now at this point, you would think surely you could, I don't know, maybe hook a guy up and fucking make it work, but no, absolutely not. This is the government. We have to stick to our bureaucratic nonsense. Eugene Bullard hops back on his bike and takes 2.5 days to pedal his ass 175 miles away. He finally gets there 2.5 days later. They're closed because everybody's out of lunch. Typical government nonsense. So he takes a nap, They show back up from lunch, gets his passport, does the paperwork, gets his picture taken, whole thing takes like 3 hours, comes back outside, he's gonna pedal his ass back 175 miles. Somebody stole his fucking bike. So now, he walks 175 miles back. No, I'm just kidding. He actually steals somebody else's bike and rides that back. Okay, look, I'm here for it. There's only one thief in the army. Everybody else is just trying to get their shit back. That's the rules. So another 2-day bike ride, makes it back to BRNs, gets to the embassy. They immediately put him on his way back to America. He has to go through Spain, then through Portugal. The entire trip takes like 2.5 weeks.
So you think you know Wix? Do you really? First up, we've got shape video masks. You can use different shapes to create completely different vibes and aesthetics.
He winds up in New York City and immediately starts doing anything he can to make money and calling up any connection we can possibly think of, desperately trying to figure out if his daughters are okay, and if they are, how he's going to get them back to America. And this goes on for months, just desperately trying to figure out how to get into contact with his daughters and potentially get them back home to America. And then he actually manages to get in contact with one of his old buddies, a guy that hung out at his club all the time, the ex-ambassador to France on behalf of America, Mr. Bullock, and he still works in the United States State Department. So he gets a hold of him, ends up having a meeting, explains the situation. Mr. Bullock makes one phone call, and the next day, Bullard finds out that his daughters are okay, and they are now in American custody and protection, and they are going to be sent back to America to be their children. Now, the United States government is going to front the money, but Bullard is going to have to pay them back, has no idea how he's going to be able to do it. Veterans groups find out, they raise money, they pay off the entire thing. Bullard gets reunited with his daughters, Jacqueline and Lolita, and they are now living in a 750 square foot apartment in Harlem, while Bullard goes back to being a longshoreman, doing anything he can to make money and raise his dollars. A couple of months go by, everything kind of stabilizes, they're getting used to their new environment, everything's starting to look good, so naturally, Bullard, being Bullard, goes to the recruiting office of every branch of the United States military, volunteering for service because he wants to go back and keep fighting the Nazis. They politely decline. So Bullard just keeps working, keeps raising his daughters. This goes on for years and years, and then eventually his daughters grow up, they get married, they move off and do their own thing, and he's now just in this apartment by himself. After World War II came to an end, he tried to reestablish his rights of ownership to his gym and his nightclub. Unfortunately, nothing ever came of it. He was at least able to get France to recognize his military service, so France was now paying him military pension for being a veteran. So Bullard's just kind of working, doing his thing. Then the 1950s roll around, and one of his little buddies hits him up, a guy by the name of Louis Armstrong, one of the most famous jazz musicians of all time, is like, hey, I'm in New York, I need a backup drummer, my guy's sick, you want to come out, I gotta do some recordings. So Eugene Bullard is actually on recordings with Louis Armstrong being his drummer in like multiple songs. He's literally like the Black Forest Gump. Like, he's done so much random, incredible shit, it doesn't even make sense. Now, by this point in time, Eugene's getting up there in age. He's really starting to feel all of his old war injuries. He can't keep being a longshoreman any longer. He needs to get a job that's a little bit easier on the body. So he ends up getting a job as an elevator operator at Rockefeller Center. The craziest part about this is nobody has any idea who Bullard is in America. They've never really talked about him. He's never really been in the press. He's like a legend over in France, but he's just a humble elevator operator in New York City here in America. And in 1954, the humble elevator operator is requested upon by the French government to fly over to France and to light the eternal flame at the tomb of the unknown French soldier, which he does. And then he just goes right back to operating the elevator in obscurity. And then, in 1959, he is called upon by France again, and he is awarded the Médaille Militaire, which is the French equivalent of the Medal of Honor, and he is also made a Knight of France. Those one together the party has comprised the 3 highest honors that the government of France can bestow upon anyone, and he's got all of them. Now, the entire time he's been an elevator operator, he's always like wearing a couple of medals or two. Nobody really says much about it. They don't recognize what they are. They're French medals. Why would anybody know that? And then he comes back and he's got, the Legion of Honor, the medal that made him a knight, and he wears that to work one day. And there's this guy, his name's Dave Garroway. He's the host of the Today Show, a very, very popular show at the time. And he hops in the elevator with Gene again for probably the 1000th time. And for whatever reason on this day, Dave Garroway recognizes that medal. He's like, Gene, what is that? He's like, oh, it's the Legion of Honor. It was just awarded recently. He's like, what? And Gene, just being Gene, is like, yeah, I fought in World War I and World War II. I was the first black combat pilot ever, so just, I kind of have some medals. At which point, Dave Garroway's like, do you want to get interviewed, like today, like right now? And Bullard's like, I'm working. I have to find somebody to cover my shift. And he's like, I'll I'll make the phone call. Trust me, you're fine. Just come on. You're going to get interviewed on live TV right now. So he goes on live TV for 15 minutes in his elevator operator's uniform. The whole thing goes viral for the 1950s. He ends up going on a bunch of other news shows. They all request that he wear his elevator operator's uniform because it's like kind of the shtick, I guess. But regardless, he gets his 15 minutes of fame. People finally start to know and recognize who he is. All this attention from the public actually inspires him to team up with an author and have his memoirs written and hopefully get them published. Unfortunately, once they were finished, no publisher wanted to publish them because, and I quote, the story's too unbelievable. Luckily, there are several books written about him. Both of them are called All Blood Runs Red, one by Henry Harris and one by Phil Keith. From here, he has one last moment with his son. The president of France comes to America for a trip, and they're making a huge deal out of it. There's a parade when he gets here. They're like, filming him, and everybody's watching him go to Saks Fifth Avenue to go shopping. He's got this speaking engagement at this auditorium with like 5,000 people, and Eugene Bullard shows up in this speaking event. And the president, when he walks in, the crowd's cheering. He locks eyes with Eugene Bullard, and he sees him. The president walks straight up to him and says, "Are you Eugene Bullard?" To which he says, "Yes, Mr. President, I am." And he goes to shake his hand, and the president kind of swats his hand away and pulls Eugene in for a bear hug and says, "All of France owes you a great debt," as everybody cheers. And it's the perfect moment. Like, it's the end of Lord of the Rings. It's perfect. Shortly after this, he is unfortunately diagnosed with a very aggressive form of intestinal cancer that would rapidly bring about the end of his life. 3 days after his 66th birthday, he would pass away. The last person to visit him was the author of his memoirs, Louise Hardy. And when she got there, he was unconscious, in bed, laying down, hooked up to a breathing tube. And she's kind of crying quietly, and he must have heard her, because the last words that he ever said was he woke up, pulled out his breathing tube, and said, "Don't fret, honey, it's easy." The dude can't even die without being a complete badass. At his request, he was buried in a simple plot of the Federation of French War Veterans Cemetery in Queens. His grave is marked by a 1-foot slab of concrete on top of it, bearing his name, his date of birth, and his date of death. Also at his request, he was buried in his uniform, not his flight uniform, not the fancy suit that he wore while he was a spy and a nightclub owner, not with a set of boxing gloves, but in his French Legionnaire's uniform. Which tells me that at the end of the day, despite living one of the most incredible lives in human history, he didn't want to be remembered as the first black combat pilot, or the professional boxer, or the spy and the nightclub owner. He wanted to be remembered as a man that picked up a gun and went off into battle to fight for what he believed in, just like everybody else. Thank you for watching. The best way to support the channel is to go buy some merch over at battlenutrition.com. Whack bang. Out. Okay, good. Now that I'm not fighting back tears anymore, can we talk about something for a minute? Would you look at this man right here? Okay, the dude has done like 12 different chapters of his life, and all of them are infinitely more badass than anything I will ever do. And he has the audacity to look like a professional male model the entire fucking time he does it. This is outrageous. Okay, I gotta go like hug my kids or something. I feel like I've accomplished nothing with my life.
Leave the metal to us, so you can get the job done. Metal supermarkets.
Oh, aluminum-free deodorant for all-day odor protection isn't a myth, it's native.
Ah yes, that time the pirates kept messing with American ships, so George Washington founded the United States Navy to do something about it. Yeah, the United States Navy was founded for the sole reason of hunting pirates. Today we're talking about the Barbary Wars. Ladies and gentlemen, it's pretty much an ongoing internet joke. Do not mess with America's boats, because of Operation Praying Mantis, that time that America decided they were going to sink half of Iran's Navy in like 8 hours. And Vietnam, and World War II, and World War I, and the Spanish-American War, and the War of 1812. I guess if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you, this is the origin story of why you don't mess with America's boats. But first, a word from our sponsor, because this video is brought to you by my favorite underwear company, Sheath. Wait, hold on, I'm supposed to read the script for this one. Here's how to do a perfect ad read for our company. Let's take favorite sponsor for today's show, which is Sheath Underwear. Sheath makes the most comfortable boxer briefs ever worn. And Clarence's parents have a real good marriage. Shit's fucking lame. Okay, look, here's the deal. Whether you're talking to a veteran, a construction worker, or your dad, they're all going to tell you that there's one universal truth to life, and that truth is that cargo pockets are fucking awesome.
Goddamn right.
If you think cargo shorts are cool, wait till you try cargo underwear, except the cargo pocket is made with balls not being stuck to your thigh technology. And I know what you're thinking, but chubby electron guy, what if I try them out and I don't like it? Cool, just wear them like normal underwear and then you have a bonus cargo pocket. Nobody in the history of mankind has ever been like, damn it, I have too many available cargo pockets. It's never happened. First of all, cargo shorts are awesome. They always have been. Second of all, you know what you and this cargo pocket have in common?
You don't know either of us.
Well, at least I know who I'm not letting put their phone in my pocket next time we go somewhere. Anyways, if you want to try some cheap cargo underwear for yourself or buy some as a gift for your significant other, I'll have a link in the description down below, and you can use the discount code FATElectrician for 20% off. Back to the video. Alright, here's the thing. For 3 centuries, pirates from the Barbary states of Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli would raid merchant vessels in the Mediterranean, steal all the goods, and imprison and turn all of the crew members into slaves. So, why was this allowed to go on for over 300 years? Well, the only navies powerful enough to stop these pirates at the time were the Spanish, the French, and the British. And they all came to the same conclusion that it would be cheaper to pay off the pirates, give them a yearly tribute to not raid their ships, rather than go to war with them. So now those 3 empires aren't getting their ships raided, which is fine, that's a good thing, I guess, but here's the catch with it, that they may or may not have known at the time, but they definitely figured out somewhere along the way. Now, the pirates are only raiding all the smaller nations, okay? It's like Walmart, Target, Amazon getting together, encouraging shoplifting, knowing that they can shoulder the financial burden, but it puts all the other mom and pop stores out of business and they become the only ones selling goods. Except instead of retail stores, we're talking about entire nations. This goes on for literally hundreds of years, but America is still part of the British Empire, so they fall under their umbrella of protection, so it's never an issue. That is until the American Revolution started on April 19, 1775 with the shot heard around the world, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and the famous story of a 78-year-old veteran going out into his front yard and shooting 3 redcoats as they retreated back to Boston, sending the message to all of America that the British Empire should get off of our lawn. Fast forward 1783, America wins the Revolutionary War, officially becoming its own country, and all of America's merchant vessels start flying the old red, white, and blue. And pretty much immediately, 1784, one of America's merchant vessels is captured by Barbary pirates from the country of Morocco. As an act of good faith for a new nation, Spain actually pays off the pirates, gets the American vessel and all of its crew back, returns it to America, and then advises the American government, hey, you guys should start paying these guys off too. That's what all the big nations are doing. At which point, America's minister to France, a guy by the name of Thomas Jefferson, chimes in, and he's like, no, absolutely not. I'm going to go talk to him. Now, obviously, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, Thomas Jefferson rolls up and he's like, hey, don't ever fuck with my boats ever again, or else. At which point, the Sultan of Morocco was like, I'm sorry, who are you? I'm Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of America. You know, we just kicked the British out of our entire country. We're our own thing now. I'm sorry, you fucking pilgrims did what now? We beat the British in war, and now we are our own country. You mean to tell me that a bunch of colonial farmers with muskets went toe-to-toe with the largest military on the planet that is so good at war that they can literally wear high-vis red coats the entire time and still win, and you beat them? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I mean, yeah, I could probably just leave your boats alone from now on. Historically, seems like it's going to be a really good idea. And that is the story of how Morocco came to be the first country to recognize America as its own sovereign nation by signing the Moroccan-American Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which is the first and longest-lasting peace treaty in American history. At which point, Thomas Jefferson is like, wow, that actually worked out perfect. I'm going to go to the other 3 Barbary states and tell them the same thing now. But of course, there's going to be a catch with that. You see, there's 4 Barbary states, but Morocco's the only one that's actually truly independent, and the other 3 are just subservient branches of the Ottoman Empire. So Thomas Jefferson and John Adams go to talk to the ambassador of Tripoli, and they're like, hey, in all the Ottoman Barbary states, leave our boats alone. At which point, the ambassador informs them, absolutely not. You see, we're part of the Ottoman Empire, we don't need to listen to you, we're not scared of you guys. It is our official stance that, and I quote, it was written in the Quran that all nations which do not acknowledge the Prophet be sinners, who it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave. You know, unless they give us money. Everything's got a price.
Where do you think we'll be in AI innovation in 4 years? Well, I like the inverse of Bill Gates' quote. Bill Gates has a quote where we overestimate how much progress we'll have in 2 years, underestimate how much will be accomplished in 10 years. I think with AI, we kind of overestimate what's going to happen in 10 years, grossly underestimate what's possible inside the next 2 years. So, 2 years ago, you could think we barely had the ChatGPT moment. I think 2 years from now, we will not be able to imagine our software without AI.
Apparently. So Thomas Jefferson is like, well, okay, we're going to war then. And that's when John Adams is like, whoa, calm down. Let's just pay the tribute so that our ships can be fine. We already disbanded the Continental Navy after winning the Revolutionary War. We don't have a navy to fight these guys. We just have to give them the money. So that's what happened. For the next 8 to 10 years, America would pay tribute every year to these 3 remaining Barbary states. And every year they wanted more and more money. And eventually even that wasn't enough because Algiers began attacking American vessels anyways. Okay, we're not taking up on the rundown. I'm trying to tell you that for the first time in American history, somebody has fucked with one of America's boats and they're not immediately sorry about it. Yeah. The president, George Washington, goes to Congress and pretty much tells them what's going to happen because at this point in time, George Washington is basically the king of America. Nobody actually knows if he's going to step down from presidency or not. So he's like, hey, guess what? You guys are going to pass the Naval Act of 1794, establishing the United States Navy. And at the very top of that document, it very clearly states that the purpose we are building the United States Navy is so that we can combat Algerine corsairs, which is just a fancy word for state-funded pirates. Yes, I'm telling you, the founding document of the most powerful navy the world has ever seen, at the top, specifically states the sole reason for their creation is to hunt down and destroy pirates that had the audacity to fuck with one of America's ships. We've officially entered the find out portion of the story. America immediately commissions the building of 6 enormous frigates covered in guns to go fight these pirates. Fast forward to when the frigates are done, it takes a couple years. It is now 1798, and George Washington has decided to step down from power, allowing for an election to happen, and we are now into the second president of America, John Adams. And John Adams decides he would rather keep paying tribute.
Disappointed!
America just created the Navy, spent $1 million creating all these frigates, and now John Adams isn't going to use them for their intended purpose. Obviously, a lot of people are upset, including his own vice president, Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson, the vice president at the time, immediately begins campaigning to run against the sitting president in the next election. And one of his biggest platforms is that he's going to go fight these pirates rather than pay them tribute. And his slogan for this is, and I quote, millions in defense before a cent in tribute. Okay, just so we're clear, Thomas Jefferson's platform for running for president is I'm going to spend millions of dollars in defense, which might as well be hundreds of billions of dollars at that point. Because America no longer negotiates with terrorists, and I'm pretty sure my high school English teacher will refer to this as foreshadowing. So Thomas Jefferson wins the election. The entire world finds out that he's going to be the 3rd president of the United States of America, and then on March 4th, 1801, the day of his inauguration, he receives a letter from Yusuf Karmanali, the Pasha of Tripoli. If you don't know, Pasha is like the dictator, the king, president, the main dude in charge. And at this point, Thomas Jefferson, the guy who just ran an entire presidential campaign on I'm going to go fight pirates, is thinking in his head like, maybe this guy found out that I'm about to send a navy over there to beat him up, and he's going to send an apology. Maybe he wants to sign a peace treaty like Morocco did. This is already working out great. I might not even have to send my navy over there. He opens the letter, and Pasha Yusuf Karmanali has decided that he is going to poke the Pilgrim King because he is now demanding that because of the new administration, the United States owes him an extra $225,000 in tribute. And Thomas Jefferson is pissed. Originally, Thomas Jefferson was going to have to go to Congress, get permission to activate the Navy to send them over there to fight these pirates, but not now. He's so mad we're activating the Rainbow Shortcut to ass-whooping land, and Pasha Yusuf is going to have some consequences immediately because he's sending the Navy today. But like I said, it takes a literal act of Congress to send the U.S. Navy over there on a military mission. So Thomas Jefferson is like, that's fine, we just won't send them on a military mission. Fill up one of our frigates with a bunch of gifts and peace offerings for Pasha Yusuf, and then give it a nice healthy escort of other frigates to defend it, and send them on their merry way to deliver the gifts. Right after he gives the commander of the United States Navy the standing order that he is also to defend any American citizen or ship from any potential aggression. Not aggression, Potential aggression. If he thinks that somebody else might be thinking about doing something aggressive, so the Navy set sail. They're gone. They're en route. Thomas Jefferson's sitting in his office, and he comes to the realization, man, I'm pretty sure these pirates are going to attack him. But if they don't, they're actually going to end up giving Pasha What's-His-Nuts a bunch of these gifts. And I can't have it. So he whips out the overflowing parchment. He writes a letter back and sends that off. And that letter basically reads, hey, America's done giving you tribute for the rest of forever. F off. And obviously the letter makes it there first, at which point Pasha goes to the American consulate building and chops down the flagpole with the American flag on it, which in that part of the world is how you declare war. So the U.S. Navy shows up off the coast of Barbary States. The pirates attack them because they've already declared war. The U.S. Navy defends themselves. Word gets back to America. Congress then is like, oh, hey, we're at war. We're going to go ahead and give Thomas Jefferson permission to use the United States Marine Corps at his discretion. And this is why, to this day, the United States Marine Corps is the only branch of the U.S. military that can be sent and deployed anywhere in the world without congressional approval. So for the next 2 years, the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps set up a naval blockade and just won a pirate hunting extravaganza until October of 1803, when the USS Philadelphia would get hung up on an uncharted reef right off the coast of Tripoli. The pirates seize this opportunity, they attack the USS Philadelphia, board it, take the crew hostage, and then over the next couple months they were able to repair it enough to get it back into the harbor at Tripoli, where they then anchored it in place and used it as fixed artillery because it had way more guns than any other vessel they had. Q, our first main character, is Stephen Decatur, the commander of the USS Enterprise, America's unofficial flagship. He decides he's going to don his plot armor, take the USS Enterprise out, and acquire himself a pirate ship, which he does. He then takes that pirate ship and the USS Enterprise and sails both of them to Sicily, where he hires 5 Sicilian mercenaries that know how to speak Arabic. They then sail back to Tripoli, where Decatur and 80 Marines are going to go below deck of this pirate ship, which has now been christened the USS Intrepid, as the 5 mercenaries are going to sail directly into the heart of the harbor, pretending to be Barbary pirates. They then go directly to the USS Philadelphia. 80 Marines and Stephen Decatur run out, kill the entire crew of pirates that are on the USS Philadelphia, and reclaim it. Unfortunately, the USS Philadelphia is too damaged to actually be used as a ship ever again, at which point Stephen Decatur decides, fine, we're just going to burn the entire thing to the ground, because if we can't have it, nobody can. Deprive the enemy of nice things. I'm pretty sure Sun Tzu said that. So that's exactly what they do. They light the USS Philadelphia on fire, they're positive it can't be put out, and then they bounce. Not a single American is injured, and Stephen Decatur is hailed a hero because he has now led what is, in my opinion, America's first special operations mission. So now that that's taken care of, the problem at hand is that the crew of the USS Philadelphia is still being held hostage by the Barbary pirates, and they want a ton of money in exchange for them back. However, America no longer negotiates with terrorists, and that's not an option. Cue our next 2 main characters, William and Presley O'Bannon. And before you ask, yes, Presley O'Bannon is in the USS O'Bannon, the Fletcher-class destroyer from World War II that sank a Japanese submarine with potatoes. So they go in and they pitch their idea of how they're going to get the crew of the USS Philadelphia back, and it is, by every definition, a special operations mission. Basically, they want to take themselves 2 dudes plus 6 Marines for a total of 8 guys, and they're going to get dropped off in Egypt, because in Egypt is Yusuf Harmoni's brother that is living in exile, because Yusuf kicked him out because he is technically the rightful heir of Tripoli. So they're going to get that guy and all the buddies that are loyal to him, like 500 men, and then they're going to march them through the desert to Derna, where they are then going to use them to fight and take over the city and exchange the city for the crew of the USS Philadelphia. And upon hearing this ridiculous plan, the U.S. military leadership is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You want to take a small contingency of men, be dropped off in a foreign country, meet up with a rebel leader who already has a bunch of men, and then convince him that you're going to help him overthrow a current dictator, and then he can be the new dictator, and basically we're using other people to fight other people that we don't like to benefit us. And Presley O'Bannon and Eaton are like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. And the government is like, this is a terrific idea. I mean, we're probably never ever going to do anything like this ever again. we're not going to have an entire branch of special forces that specializes in it. Sorry, anyways, that's exactly what they do. They get dropped off in Egypt, they track down Hamet, they're like, hey, you want to go overthrow your brother? Cool, grab your guys, let's go. Somewhere along the way, the Marines also picked up 50 Greek mercenaries as they all began marching 500 miles through the Libyan desert to get back to the Tripolitan coast. And this march through the desert takes 50 days, and it is a complete shit show because somewhere along the way, they start running low on supplies, and they have to start rationing. And then some people get mad, there's accusations because the Greek guys are Christian, Hamet's guys are Muslims, there's fighting amongst themselves, and there's these 8 Marines standing in the middle, desperately trying to keep them from killing each other as they march through the desert. So despite multiple mutiny attempts and a ton of fights, the Marines were able to keep this group together enough to make it through the Libyan desert until they arrived at the coastal city of Barbary. Once they get there, they meet up with the USS Argus that gives them a bunch of supplies so they can start eating food again, and they give enough money to pay off the Greek mercenaries. Then, Eaton decides that he's going to send a letter over to the governor of Derna right next door, because remember, we can't attack unless they're potentially aggressive.
Building your online business? Go to Wix.com and set up your store on a single integrated platform. Add products, showcase them dynamically, and seamlessly track your...
Okay, so he sends a letter and is basically like, hey, I'm going to march my army through the middle of your town to go kill your boss on my way to Tripoli. Can I have some safe passage and maybe some food? The governor of Derna sends a letter back that says, my head or yours, which sounds potentially aggressive enough. So they begin making a plan for the ground attack. Hamet and his men are going to take the governor's palace, and the Marines and the Greek mercenaries are going to take out the harbor fortress. But to do that, they're going to need a cannon from the USS Argus, so they're going to meet up with it, go get this cannon, and prepare for their attack. Cut back to Stephen Decatur. While all this has been happening, there's still been a naval battle in the Mediterranean the entire time. And Stephen Decatur is on an absolute rampage because after he captured his first pirate ship, he received word that his brother, James Decatur, had been mortally wounded by one of the pirate ship's captains, who was pretending to surrender before shooting his younger brother. Upon hearing this, Decatur immediately gives command of the new captured vessel to one of his men, leaves a couple guys with him, and takes off to track down this pirate ship that just killed his brother. So they chase down this pirate ship, they pull up right next to it. Before the crew has time to do any boarding procedures, you know, like break out the planks, tie some ropes to the other ship, all that stuff you see in the movies. Nah, Stephen Decatur jumps into the enemy ship and starts killing pirates immediately. 9 Marines, seeing that happen, are like, oh shit, we're doing this. So they jump onto the pirate ship too and start throwing down, at which point the pirate ship veers off and breaks away from Decatur's ship. It is now 9 Marines and Stephen Decatur versus over 30 pirates on this vessel, and 30 is not going to be enough. Stephen Decatur kills multiple pirates, including the captain that had slain his brother, officially avenging his brother's death, capturing that vessel as well. But he is still absolutely furious that his brother died, and he continues to go on a rampage, capturing another pirate ship and destroying 3 more over the coming weeks. Cut back to the men on the ground. Eaton and O'Bannon have been getting their battle plan ready this entire time. They just had their men go get a cannon off the USS Argus because they really need this cannon if they're going to be able to pull off this mission. So they're ready to attack. The U.S. Navy gets into formation, and they're going to bombard the entire city of Derna while they launch this attack. Despite that, there's over 2,000 men loyal to Pasha Yusuf that are going to defend it, and they are heavily outnumbered. So Navy starts bombarding the shore. Hamet and his men take off to go attack the governor's palace, and Eaton, O'Bannon, the Marines, and the Greek mercenaries begin launching their attack on the harbor fortress. They open up with the initial cannon fire, which is going to be vital to be able to break through the enemy lines and establish their foothold. They fire the cannon. As they go to reload and fire it again, they realize that they had accidentally forgot to take the ramrod out of the cannon and shot that at the enemy too. Now the cannon's completely out, and they're kind of like, oh shit, what do we do? What do we do? Presley O'Bannon just charges into battle as the other Marines follow behind him and the Greek mercenaries behind them. They attack so quickly and so violently that they're able to overrun the entire enemy fortress before anybody really knows what's going on. And Presley O'Bannon becomes the first American ever to raise the Star-Spangled Banner over a foreign battlefield. This battle, the taking of the Tripolitan coastal city of Derna, is enshrined in Marine Corps history in the Marine Corps hymn with the line from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. And it is also when the Marine Corps would get their first nickname ever because the 7 Marines present in this battle fought so hard and so violently that they simply became known as the leathernecks, referring to the leather collar that they wore around their neck to protect it from slashes from pirate swords. So Yusuf's men get beat back and forced to retreat to Tripoli, at which point the Marines, the Greeks, and Hamet and his men all consolidate, figure out what happened. Hamet and his men were able to take over the governor's palace, and after the taking of the city of Derna, Hamet awards his very own sword to Presley O'Bannon as a gift for how valiantly he fought in battle. And this is the Mameluke sword, the same sword that is on the Marine Corps uniform today. So now Yusuf consolidates his military, sends an enormous army back to Derna to try to take it back over, and they're kind of just sitting on the outskirts of the city, waiting for the right moment to attack. Eaton and O'Bannon are writing correspondence to the U.S. military in the chain of command, like, hey, we took this entire city with like 8 Marines, give us some reinforcements, we're going to go take Tripoli next, and then we'll just overthrow this entire country. This goes on for over a month, and they defend the city multiple times from attacks from Yusuf's men, and eventually Eaton receives a letter informing him that he is to stand down and just leave, because American diplomat Tobias Locke has struck up a deal with Yusuf Karmanali. And apparently he struck up this deal with absolutely nobody's permission, because the deal is America is going to pay Yusuf Karmanali, the pirate king, $60,000, and in exchange we are going to receive the USS Philadelphia back, as well as a peace treaty that they are going to leave American ships alone from now on. So yeah, everybody's pretty pissed off about it. Thomas Jefferson, Presley O'Bannon, William Eaton, Stephen Decatur, they're all furious that we are now giving $60,000 to this pirate king, as opposed to overthrowing his entire city of Tripoli, or at a minimum using the fact that they're holding Derna and use that as leverage to exchange. But whatever, the war's over, I guess. For now.
Guys, do something special for your wife this year with a gift that she'll cherish forever. It says, to my wife, I didn't marry you so that...
So the peace treaties were signed in 1805. Now, fast forward 7 years, 1812, the War of 1812 happens. Okay, if you don't know the War of 1812, there's more to it than this, but the reason that it started is that Great Britain wanted to have more control over the seas and trade, because America was getting too much, because America was no longer getting attacked by pirates, because we just beat them in a war now too. So, Great Britain launches another war against America. During this war, they encouraged the Barbary pirates to start attacking American vessels again. And honestly, it works out pretty good for the pirates, at least for a little while, because the American Navy is too busy to worry about them, because their hands are full with the British Navy. Fast forward 2 years, 8 months later, the War of 1812 ends. Now, luckily for the Barbary pirates, Thomas Jefferson is no longer president at this point. We are on to America's 4th president. Let me check my notes here. James Madison. If you don't know, James Madison is one half of what is referred to as the forefathers dynamic duo, and the other half is his best friend of all time, Thomas Jefferson. And I don't know if you figured this out yet at this point in the story, but Thomas Jefferson hates pirates. So, sitting President James Madison, being the homie that he is, looks over at now Commodore Stephen Decatur and says, he then proceeds to assemble the largest U.S. naval fleet ever at this point in time and sails directly to the Barbary coast. He then immediately tracks down Algiers' flagship, the Mashuda, takes it out, captures over 400 members of its crew and the ship itself. He then proceeds to take all of his gunboats directly to Algiers, park them in the port, and say, here's the deal, you're going to surrender and you're never going to collect tribute from anyone ever again, or I'm going to overthrow your entire country. Obviously, they take the first option, at which point Decatur's like, okay, cool, next order of business, you're also going to pay me back for all the U.S. merchandise that you plundered during the War of 1812. And they're like, okay, here you go. They give it to him. He then proceeds to sail his fleet next door to Tunis and tell them the exact same thing, ordering them to sign a peace treaty, never raid an American vessel again, and then collects a bunch of money. He then sails them next door again to Tripoli and does the exact same thing. Collects all this money, gets the peace treaties. The Barbary pirates never mess with America ever again. Decatur and his fleet sail back home, and he tells the government what happened. The American government is blown away at the results that Decatur was able to achieve. When asked how he managed to not only get peace treaties without too much violence, but also get a bunch of money and concessions on top of it, all Decatur said was, peace was achieved through the mouth of our cannons, at which point he was given the nickname the Conqueror of the Barbary Pirates. And with the rest of the world seeing a new country in its infancy stand up for itself against the Barbary pirates and winning, they would start doing it too, and everybody started fighting back and quit paying tribute to the Barbary pirates, and in the coming years, they would fade into nothing as their 300-year reign of terror had come to an end. So in conclusion, the moral of the story is please, for the love of God, do not mess with America's boats. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch over at battleelectrician.com. Clap, bang, out. And that is part one of the origin story of how America became the world police. And part two is after the Korean War when NATO was founded.
Gabapentin is bringing you closer to amputation. These are 3 symptoms that are signaling that you could be close to losing your foot. I'm going to show you the critical signs, why it happens, and what you can do about it. This video could save your life if you're feeling any or all of these symptoms. There's a good...
Ah yes, that kindly communists tried to starve an entire city, so America and the UK teamed up to deliver 4.6 billion pounds of food and supplies to that city using nothing but cargo planes. To never come with the biggest economic and logistical flex of all time, America's Operation Vittles and the UK's Operation Plainfield coming together to be known as the Berlin Airlift. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Henson's Shaving. Okay, here's the deal. Henson's is a family-owned machine shop that makes parts for the aerospace industry. There's literally parts of the Mars rover that these guys made. And one day they woke up and they're like, hey, wait, so you have a month. You buy this, they get sent to trust you, also one of the very best razors in the video. Alright, a quick background info. After World War II, the Allied forces took control of Germany and it was split into pretty much 4 different chunks. The Soviets got a piece, America got a piece, the French and the British both got a piece. Here's a map of that right here. Okay, here's what gets over here. Berlin was also split into 4 equal chunks. The problem with that was Berlin was 100 miles into the Soviet territory. So you have this little tiny speck on the map of British, French, and American territory completely surrounded by the USSR. Well, that wasn't really a problem because right after World War II, everybody was still an ally, so America, the British, and the French had no problems using the roadways and the trains to get food and supplies to their section of Berlin. Now, just so we're on the same page, Berlin, and essentially all of Germany to a slightly lesser extent, is essentially a third world country at this point in time. Berlin, in particular, has essentially been turned into rubble from Allied bombings. The entire German economy is in the toilet, and all of the German people are not getting a lot of sympathy from the global community because, well, they kind of started it. Now, with the Allied forces in control of Germany, it is their job and their responsibility to help take care of the German people. Now, the Western powers, America, Great Britain, and France, they're all on the same page. They all have the same game plan. They want to go in, render aid in the short term to the German people, then in the long term, help prop up their economy, get them back on their own feet, and then they can leave. The USSR, on the other hand, aka the communists, absolutely hate that idea. The last thing a bunch of communists want is people being able to take care of themselves. So they step in and they're like, no, absolutely not. We're going to build a communist utopia out of this place. So, in order to stop the Western powers from helping Germany, they decided they're going to print billions and billions of Reichsmarks, the German currency. They devalue the currency so there's so much money that it's no longer a store of value, to the point that it literally takes a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. Because of this, the already struggling German economy completely collapses and a black market sets in, and the new currency for Germany is essentially cigarettes and food. And this goes on for like 2 years with the West trying to negotiate with the USSR on how to proceed. And during that time, the people of Berlin are quite literally starving and freezing to death, with the average Berliner eating less than 1,000 calories a day. Eventually, the West steps in and they're like, fuck it, we're just going to do it without the communists because we have to help these people. So they created a new type of currency for Germany known as the Deutschmark. It's going to be seen as a real store of value and help rebuild the German economy. The Soviets find out about this and they freak out, basically break all diplomatic communication with Western powers, and they officially want to break up and just have East versus West, capitalism versus communism, Hungary versus Fed. This is where the Cold War really starts kicking off. And the first ideological battleground of the Cold War is going to be Berlin, because remember, it's 100 miles into Soviet territory, and a big chunk of it is still controlled by the Western powers. So, the Soviets decide they need to take over that part of Berlin too. They can't have respect for capitalism in their communist utopia. Now, luckily for the communists, it's an easy fix. They really don't have to do anything, because the minute the West Berliners see what a communist utopia really looks like, they're going to willfully and freely denounce capitalism and run over and become communists too, right? Wrong. That's never going to happen because communism sucks. It's always sucked and it's always going to suck. So the communists are going to do what they always do. They are going to basically present West Berlin the option, join or we will attempt to kill you. Because if you don't know, that's the dirty little secret to communism. They always talk about seizing the means of production. What they never bother to tell you is that people are also part of that means of production, and they will seize you too. So that's exactly what they do. They attempt to seize West Berlin. They blockaded off from the Western powers. They cut off every road, every railway, and every waterway so that the Western powers cannot get West Berlin food or mediocre supplies. And then they cut off the power to that section of the city, quite literally freezing and starving them to death until they comply. So obviously this is a diplomatic and humanitarian disaster. All the military leadership runs over to President Truman and they're like, hey, what do you want us to do? Basically, we've got three options. Option A, we can start rolling tanks in and kick off World War III right now. Option B, we can just leave the Berlin people there to die. And option C, we can try to fly in as much food and supplies as possible, but getting enough to feed an entire city is basically going to be impossible. What do you want to do? Now, obviously, I'm paraphrasing a little, but Truman basically said, we're America, we don't start world wars, we just finish them. Also, and I quote, we stay in Berlin, period. Which narrows it down to one single option. They are going to fly in enough food and enough supplies to try to feed all of West Berlin. Here's the catch with that. The American leadership has absolutely no idea what that's going to take or how to even proceed. So they go to the British government, who's just spent the last decade rationing their own people, and they have a great understanding of what it takes to keep a large population of people fed and warm. So Great Britain crunches the numbers, and they figure to get every single person in West Berlin 1,700 calories a day, it's going to be 1,500 tons of food every single day. In addition to that, since the power got cut off, they're going to need 2,500 tons of coal and fuel every single day. Okay, 4,000 tons, just so we're all on the same page, that is 8 million pounds of supplies every single day just to keep everyone alive. And the best cargo plane they have to work with at this point in time is the C-47 Skytrain, which has a maximum capacity of 3 tons, meaning that they are going to have to land 1,333 cargo planes into Berlin every single day. To put that into perspective, there's only 1,440 minutes in a day, meaning that one plane has to land every minute and 8 seconds. This is impossible. Despite that, the newly formed United States Air Force says, hold my nuclear bombs and watch this shit, because on June 26, 1948, 2 days after the Soviet blockade, they launch Operation Vittles, where they are going to try to feed an entire city via cargo plane. 2 days after that, June 28th, the UK says, hey, we're going to help too, and the RAF launches Operation Planefare, and together this becomes known as the Berlin Airlift, and right out of the gate, it is a complete and utter shit show. They're trying to fly in planes from absolutely everywhere. It's disorganized chaos. There's planes crashing. There's mid-air collisions. It's a complete disaster. And on their best day, they're maybe able to get 1,000 tons of supplies, less than a fifth of what they need. Now, at this point, the conditions in Berlin are getting worse and worse by the day. The communists are essentially laughing at the stupid capitalist pigs, at which point America calls up one of its main characters, a man by the name of General William Tucker.
The first time I saw Spark, I thought it was a trick of the light. The way sunlight catches dust in the air.
Alright, this is the guy that coordinated all the logistics of getting supplies into China during World War II when they had to fly over the Himalayas. If anybody can unfuck this situation, it's gonna be him. And that's exactly what he does. So General Tucker comes in and he's like, here's the deal, we're gonna fly these planes like we're conducting an orchestra. There's 3 air channels to Berlin. The 2 on the outside are gonna be planes going to Berlin, and the one in the middle is gonna be planes leaving Berlin. For the 2 air channels going into Berlin, we're gonna launch 1 plane every 3 minutes, all day, every single day. And those planes are gonna fly at 5 separate altitudes, staggering every single time to give them just enough time to land. The Germans on the receiving end of this are like, we're literally starving to death. We got to help out the Americans and the British with this. So they show up and they start unloading the cargo planes for them. And they get so good at unloading these planes that they can unload all 3 tons of cargo in under 7 minutes and help get the planes turned around and sent back out. And this turns into one of the most beautiful humanitarian team effort moments in human history. There's American and British British, pilots, air crew members, mechanics, all just showing up in West Germany without even being called to help with this effort and to fly and repair these planes to keep them going around the clock. And then over in Berlin, the same thing is happening. There's Luftwaffe airplane mechanics showing up to help repair the American and British cargo planes to keep everything running. The two sides that were fighting against each other just a few years ago are now working together to save people. Everybody involved in this operation gets so good at what they're doing that the choke point that's holding up even more progress is that they don't have enough airfields to land the planes on. So the Germans straight up built another one. The only problem with that was there was this big-ass apartment building in the way, and when the pilots lowered the landing gear, their landing gear would only clear that apartment roof by like 20 feet, which seems like it would be kind of terrifying. So the Germans are like, hey, you want us to rip that apartment building down? What do you guys want us to do? And the American and RAF pilots are like, bro, we just got done flying in World War II. You guys and the Japanese shooting at us, the apartment's going to be fine, trust me. And sure enough, they start not only hitting, but exceeding the quota of 4,500 tons a day. And this infuriates the Soviets. This is the biggest economic and logistical flex of all time. It shouldn't even be possible, and yet America, the UK, and the people of West Berlin are somehow pulling it off. At this point, the Soviets decide they have to try to do something to stop this. So they start sending up all their fighter planes to try to mess with all the American and British cargo pilots by flying too close. They're basically trying to mess up air traffic, cause accidents, do anything they can to slow down this logistical miracle. However, it doesn't really work. Why? Because the American and British pilots know that it's basically a bluff, because it's essentially a giant game of fuck around and find out. Because if the Soviets actually do anything, it's going to kick off World War III, and at this point in time, America is the only country on the planet that has nuclear bombs and a president that's not afraid to use them. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that the American and RAF pilots are flying with the confidence of knowing that if one of these Soviets shoots them down, President Truman is going to bitch slap their entire country with the sun. Needless to say, they were unfazed by the Soviet harassment. How unfazed were they? Thank you so much for asking. Cue our next main character, Gail Halverson, aka the Candy Bomber. He was one of the many pilots that was flying supplies into Berlin, and somewhere along the way he decided that he was going to start dropping candy bars with little handkerchief parachutes out of the window of his plane over West Berlin so that the kids could get some candy. And eventually this caught on, and all the kids were waiting where the planes would fly over, hoping that they would get a candy bar. Then the American government caught on, and they're like, oh shit, this is a great propaganda opportunity. Imagine what it would be like if every single plane was dropping candy at them. So that's exactly what they do. They start dropping a bunch of candy out of every plane, and then they make propaganda out of it. But then it gets bigger because all the American candy companies start sponsoring it and donating even more candy to drop. And then it gets bigger because all the kids in America and the UK start raising money in school to buy candy to give to the kids in Germany. And they're giving out even more candy. And the Soviets have to stand there and watch as the Americans and the British are not only flying in a literal Costco worth of shit into West Berlin every single day, but they're dropping candy out of their planes like it's a fucking parade the entire time. And this is all going on while East Germany and East Berlin is eating potatoes and standing in bread lines, and it makes the Soviets look like the biggest assholes on the planet. Because not only are the people of East Germany watching the Western world essentially move heaven and earth to help out West Berlin, they're also watching the Soviets be more interested in disrupting America and the UK from helping people than they are in helping the people of East Germany. In short, America and the UK are playing to win, and the Soviets are playing to not lose, and it is leading to a lower quality of life for all of East Germany. As it turns out, Sun Tzu was yet again correct when he said, the sun may rise in the east, but it sets in the west, and that's because West Side is the best side.
But that's not what it means. Not even close.
That might have been Ice Cube, actually. Anyways.
I can never remember how to perfectly format my citations.
Just click in citation and you have a full citation ready to copy. Always formatted perfectly.
Perfect. I can even show I use Grammarly for paraphrasing.
Use that.
So now, in retaliation for all this, America, the UK, pretty much the entire Western world, we're going to put bunch of embargoes in the Soviet Union and punished them financially and economically. Now, the Soviets absolutely cannot afford this, but they keep telling themselves it's okay, winter is coming, and as soon as winter gets here, they're not going to be able to land all these planes, and this whole thing's going to fall apart. We just have to wait out long enough for winter to slow down America and the UK. So that's what they do. They just try to shoulder the financial burden and wait for winter to come and put a stop to this entire thing. Winter comes, and winter, it does slow down some of the flights, but here's the catch. America was also developing bigger, better cargo planes, and now America isn't just flying the C-47, America's flying their new cargo plane, the C-74 Globemaster, and as opposed to the previous C-47 carrying only 3 tons, the Globemaster can carry 25. So despite the fact that weather can sometimes delay flights, America and the UK continue to improve and increase the amount of supplies that they're delivering daily. And by Easter Sunday, 1949, they would break their own record, landing 1,383 planes in a single day, delivering 13,000 tons of supplies, which is 26 million pounds, which obviously is like 11.8 billion kilograms, or roughly 87 blue whales. Yeah, the United States Air Force and the RAF shipped 87 blue whales worth of crap into West Berlin in a single day. And because of this, it becomes very apparent to the Soviet Union that America can and will keep this shit up forever if they have to, and they are finally forced to give up the blockade because they cannot shoulder the financial burden anymore, and that would come down on May 12, 1949. And with the roads and railways to West Berlin finally open once again, the Berlin Airlift would come to an end after 15 months, 277,000 flights, spanning 92,000 miles, and delivering 2.3 million tons of aid, which is roughly 4.6 billion pounds, or 15,333.33 whole whales. This is the greatest logistical and humanitarian feat ever accomplished, and the Western world did it with communism doing everything it could to slow it down. So in conclusion, fuck communism. The best way to support the channel is go buy some merch at fatelectrician.com. Crack bang out. And then the Soviet Union got all pissy and built a wall over Germany, and that's what we're going to talk about next.
I want to know, have you made this mistake with your holster and find it uncomfortable so you don't carry all the time? You may have. And even if you have, you probably want a holster that's more comfortable.
People are probably going to get mad and call this video propaganda, but in my defense, it's not my fault. The only thing you have to do to make anti-communist propaganda is to open a history book and start reading it out loud. Today we're talking about the Berlin Wall. It is one of the greatest examples of capitalism versus communism, East versus West, Hungary versus Fed the world has ever seen. But first, a word for our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Operation Good Boy. It's a monthly subscription box. It's got all kinds of good...
Are you okay?
Don't do this, please. You're getting into the tree in a second. Don't do. Okay. You've ruined my answer. Anyways, it comes with all kinds of cool stuff for your dog. We've got dog poop and rubber bags. We've got a little doggy first aid kit. We've got daily multivitamins for him. And then we've got Mushu's favorite, the TRE, the treats ready to eat. These are made right here in America. And Mushu is a big fan, right? You shake. Good, cute, wonderful work. Okay. Good job. So yeah, if you've got a dog, go check out Operation Good Boy. I'll have a link and a discount code in the description down below. Let's get back to the video. Alright, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the biggest logistical flex of all time, that being the Berlin Airlift, when the USSR tried to blockade off West Berlin to force them to become communist and to join the USSR. And America and the UK teamed up to deliver them supplies using only cargo planes, landing a cargo plane into West Berlin every 2 minutes, all day, every day for 15 months straight, feeding and supplying an entire city with 4.6 billion pounds of supplies. If you want to watch that full video, I'll have that link right here. If not, not, that's fine. Here's the bare minimum background info that you need. Right after World War II, Germany was basically split into two pieces. You had the Western powers, America, the UK, and France, controlling the western half of Germany, and you had the USSR controlling the eastern half. And here's where that gets weird. They did the same exact thing in the city of Berlin, where the West controlled the western half and the USSR controlled the eastern half, except Berlin was 100 miles into the USSR territory. And this is why the USSR blockaded off West Berlin and tried to force them to join, because they didn't want a little speck of capitalism in their communist utopia. But the West isn't about to back down from the challenge, so America and the UK team up, Wonder Twin powers activate, they launch the Berlin Airlift, they feed an entire city using nothing but cargo planes, and after 15 months, the USSR is finally forced to end the blockade because they can't afford to try to stop them. So in 1949, the roads and railways to West Berlin open back up, and everything goes back to working exactly how it was supposed to, and this is where the story really begins. From 1949 to 1951, we had what was known as a green border between East and West Germany. Basically, there was a border there. They're two separate countries. However, it was very, very easy to go from one country to the other. In fact, it was no big deal at all, which was really important because you have to remember, they just drew an arbitrary line right through the middle of Germany, and were like, hey, these are two separate countries now. It was really complicated for a lot of people. You had people that had family members that now live in a different country. You had people whose home was in one country and job was in the other. You had farmers and property owners that now owned property in a country that they didn't live in. It was very, very complicated. And while the border is essentially open, a ton of people from East Germany are taking advantage of it and migrating to West Germany because it's way, way better to live in West Germany, where the evil capitalist pigs from America and the UK have been funneling in billions of dollars worth of food, money, and resources, helping to build West Germany back up as a country, as opposed to the USSR over in East Germany, who has done the exact opposite, because they said, hey, we want our war reparations, and we want them right now. The USSR takes over $10 billion worth of hard assets and natural resources out of the East German economy and ships it back home. That is a third of the working capital of the entire country. Quite literally just took a third of their economy and got rid of it. And if that wasn't bad enough, they also liquidated almost every factory in East Germany. They took all of the machinery, all the parts, all the material that they had, and shipped it back home to the USSR. Not only have they stripped East Germany of all of their product, they've stripped them of their ability to produce. They can't even work themselves out of this difficult situation. Because of this, understandably so, people start leaving East Germany in droves. Now, by 1952, the USSR identifies this problem, understanding, oh shit, obviously our policies aren't very popular, we should probably do something about that. The only question is, what are we going to do about it? Do we A, come up with new policies that incentivize people to stay, making them want to be there and making them want to be a productive member of the society? No, absolutely not. We're going to go with option B, more reliable, good old-fashioned human rights violations. Okay, so here's the plan. We're going to shut down the border between East and West Germany. We're going to build a wall or a fence. And I know what you're thinking, walls don't work. Well, if the wall doesn't work, you know what is going to work? The landmines that we put on the other side of it. And if that doesn't work, we're going to get guard dogs. And if the guard dogs don't work, we're going to put up a bunch of guard towers. And we're going to have over 20,000 men with guns watching the border 24/7 all the time. And they have the authority to shoot anyone trying to escape on site. Now, obviously, there's one glaring hole in this plan. What if somebody is able to get past the wall, navigate through a minefield, evade the dogs, and they get seen by the guard? But because the guard is an East German, and he probably doesn't want to be in East Germany either, what if the guard just doesn't shoot him and lets him go over to West Germany? Well, that's where the giant sand pit comes in. We're going to line the entire border between East and West Germany with a 30-foot wide pad of sand. And that way, we'll be able to see any footprints when somebody runs out of East Germany into the West. And then, we're going to know that somebody escaped, and we're going to hold the guard on duty for that sector responsible, and then he's going to get in trouble. Whoa, that's a very secure border, isn't it? Rights violation. Well, right, you're using it to keep people out, but when you're using it to keep people in, it's absolutely a human rights violation according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Let me just read that for you. Article 13, Section 2, quote, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and return to his country, end quote. So yes, turning an entire country into a prison and refusing to let anyone leave when you oppress them is in fact a human rights violation. However, to be completely intellectually honest, I do have to tell you that the Soviet Union is one of only 3 nations that refused to sign the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they refused to sign it specifically because of Article 13, Section 2, which is right. They basically said that they would only consider signing it if this was added to the end of Article 13, quote, in accordance with the procedure laid down in each country, end quote. They were unanimously declined because that would ruin the entire point of Article 13, which would basically just mean that, yeah, you have a human right to leave a country unless that country tells you you can't. So what's the point of even having that as a human right? So the border is pretty much completely shut down. The only exceptions to that are the fact that you can apply for a visa to leave East Germany. However, it's very expensive. You get interrogated by the government, and the only people to actually get these visas awarded to them are people that are working on behalf of the Communist Party or somebody that is obscenely rich and is for sure coming back anyways, which seems like a weird hypocritical policy for a communist regime whose ultimate goal is to have a moneyless, classless society where everybody is treated equally to have, but whatever. And then, of course, they have to allow travel from West Germany into West Berlin, and to do that, there's very, very strict routes anybody traveling from West Germany to West Berlin has to take, and they have to go straight from one straight to the other, and they hit multiple checkpoints along the way. And this is extremely important because it opens up the Berlin loophole, because Berlin, the city that's 100 miles into communist territory, has that little speck of capitalism in it, and there's no border between West Berlin and East Berlin. So you can literally just walk from East Berlin right into West Berlin, and it's not an issue at all. So that becomes the only way to escape East Germany. People travel to East Berlin and then simply walk into West Berlin, and then they catch a car or a train or a bus from West Berlin to West Germany, and then they never go back. And between 1952 and 1961, somewhere between 2 and 4 million people do this. Bear in mind, East Germany only has a population of 17 million. That's over 20% of the population walks into West Berlin and never comes back. And of the people that did leave, they were disproportionately young, highly skilled, highly intelligent people like doctors, lawyers, skilled tradesmen, engineers. And because of this, this got the nickname the brain drain. So in 1961, the USSR is like, oh shit, this is a humongous problem. All the young, smart people are leaving. We gotta do something about this. Should we, I don't know, incentivize highly successful young people to want to stay here?
Welcome to You Gifted, the Google shopping game show where the deals are endless and everyone wins. Today's contestants are both excellent shoppers because they can reach the top shelf in any store. Please welcome basketball stars Kelsey Plum and Kalia Copper. Kelsey, Kalia, thank you for being here. First question, when you get a gift that you do not like, what do you do with it?
Re-gift.
Re-gift? You ever get caught doing that?
Absolutely.
You have?
Yeah, and I just own it.
I just keep it. I'm not gonna re-gift it. I would hate for somebody to re-gift mine.
You put it somewhere in your home,
I'm a hoarder, so
you wait several years, and then you throw it away.
exactly.
Is a basketball a good gift for a basketball player?
No, why would I want an extra basketball? I have 10 million probably in my home.
I have to tell you,
Nah. Breakout unreliable, more human rights violations for everything. So, August 13th, 1961, in the middle of the night, a bunch of East German construction workers and cops show up with guns and they put a fence all the way around West Berlin. Not to keep the West Berliners in, but to keep the East Berliners out. And East and West Berlin at this point in time were still very much intertwined. There were people that lived in the East and worked in the West and vice versa, and there were people that had family members on one side or the other side, and there were people that owned businesses and property. There were people that were seeing relatives and got separated from their families, and they weren't allowed to get back on the other side of the wall. There were literally thousands of people in Berlin that woke up one day and it was just like, congratulations, you just lost your job, you just lost your property, you lost your business, you're now separated from your family. Because of this, people started trying to break into West Berlin, or they were breaking out into East Berlin to get people and bring them back into West Berlin. At first, it was easy.